Hey guys, Ron here, and I designed 2 unevolved Pokemon with a cumulative 100 evolved forms. How did I manage to do that? With the help of you guys. I made these 2 Pokemon public a while back and asked my viewers to submit their own take on what an evolved form of my Fakemon would look like. And boy did you guys deliver. I received more than 300 evolved forms for each of my 2 babies. That's nearly 600 submissions that I had to sort through and fully absorb in order to decide my top 50, top 20, top 8, and then my number 1 favorite evolved form for each design. Here are the results. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so we can see this contest format return. And yes, I wanted to show off my Cacnea hat. Get over it. But something I can't get over is how awesome today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, is. Manta Sleep makes the world's best sleep mask and sleep accessories. Everything they do is to make sure that you get the best sleep. And I don't know if you know, but you literally can't exist without sleeping. So let's just say their sleep masks are making the world go round. And in the past, I was a skeptic. But then I moved, and unfortunately noticed how the street lamp outside my house shines directly on my eyes as I sleep. I didn't want to buy window blinds because I have nothing to hide. So now with my Manta Sleep Mask Pro, that problem is gone. And I can even fall asleep to YouTube videos without the TV burning my eyes. The Manta Sleep masks feel amazing, and they come in many different forms and purposes, with detachable parts so you can fit the mask perfectly snug on your face. It's how it gets so form-fitted. So to get a better sleep, click the link in the description and use code TRUEGREEN for 10% off your order. And if you're ready to take advantage of this opportunity as soon as possible, Manta Sleep is having one of their biggest sales this week, where you'll get 15% off the entire website, plus a free mystery sleep kit. And when your Manta Sleep mask arrives, you'll be as satisfied as I was with all these submissions. I'm actually incredibly satisfied with the amount of people who took time out of their day to design what they think my normal type and water type Pokemon could end up looking like. They had no information about these 2 critters other than their type, so it was probably tough coming up with something that would make sense given the context they had. This video is obviously split into 2 parts, so that means we're going to see the top 50 evolved forms for both designs and the winner at the end of each section. Let's begin with this guy over here. This nameless normal type was my attempt to make a Pokemon that's extremely similar to Eevee, so that my viewers had a clean slate to work with and could potentially evolve this normal type into any possible type, honestly. It's based on the Numbat, a marsupial unsurprisingly found in Australia that eats termites and therefore has a long tongue. It's nicknamed the banded anteater despite not being related to anteaters. In fact, its closest relative is the extinct thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger. While it doesn't share its size or giant mouth, its stripes are similar. It's not necessary for my viewers to know this obscure Pokemon for them to evolve it though. The more interpretations, the merrier. But I did ask them if they could guess what my normal type is based on, and wouldn't you know, a good amount did. At least 15%. More than 20% actually figured it was a Tasmanian tiger or at least related to one. Some thought it was a jackal, others a fox. In fact, a canine in general was the #1 idea. But there were some deer here and there. And before we showcase the top 50, here are a few honorable mentions who, on a different day, or with a different judge, could have easily been in the top 50. Caracastle by Bodino is well drawn and cute, but needs an extra fantastical element. Magrotus by Xavier Pokedex has a great lava texture and neat shapes. Gulacine is a cool example of similar ghostly submissions you'll see in the top 50. Jackashope by Icaros is interesting and the artist is clearly talented, but it's too big of a leap. Matt Gardner made entertaining split evolutions, but since 2 completely separate evolutions give the artist an extra advantage, I only accept them if the designs are near perfect. Kalupin is colorful and Fazzy's a master of the traditional medium. Kangaroo by Zeektastic YT has a great personality. Dark and Windy's Burndacoot showcases how he's one of the best when it comes to Sugimori style. And Bread Fox could have been #1, but if you look at the very bottom of the rules, the fine print clearly says that you're not allowed to turn the designs into bread. Sorry. Now it's time for the top 50. I'm going to describe why number 50 to 21 were among my favorites, but also why they were short of the top 20. Keep in mind, while I chose the top 50, I did have help from a bunch of other artist friends to narrow down some of the specific spots. So I'm going to try to describe our sentiment and reasons for our placements. The order isn't too specific until the top 20, because all are genuinely great, and I'd highly recommend the artists try it again next time. I hope you appreciate the critiques, because I think it would be polite to give you actual feedback for the hard work, so that you can kick it out of the park next time, instead of wondering why you didn't win. The critique is also so that the audience simply knows what I was looking for as I judged the submissions. If you want to understand everything about these Pokemon, please pause and read their dex entries, stats, and inspirations. I'm looking for a balance of design, personality, creative concept, execution of the concept, utilizing and expanding the elements of my Pokemon in a clever way, fantastical traits, and believability as a Pokemon. Now let's do this. Number 50. Numbu by Xander J266. It's basically what I expected from the competition, so I'm very satisfied with it. It's a proper Evo with more accents that stem from the existing patterns, but some later entries execute a similar concept better. No glaring flaw, so respect. Keep in mind, I told everybody to hand in their designs on a plain white background so that they'd be playing on an even playing field. Number 49, War Putri by Luke X-Ray Draw Stuff. I like the concept of an indigenous-looking Numbat, and the color scheme is quite nice. It's fierce and has some swagger, but there's far too many patterns, and the literal weapon may cross the line for some. Number 48, Thylacine by Razroth. It's one of the few with a music theme, and I love how the stripes are now the staff on a music sheet, but it's a little too minimal of a design to get too far into the contest. Number 47, Numbode by MC Ashtray. I like how this finally adds a fantastical element with the dirt on its back becoming a home for small Pokemon, and how the layers actually showcase the stripes on the Prevo. It's a great starting point, and streamlining it a bit and pushing the shapes would have gotten the design a bit further up the list. Number 46, Lepus by Cobbs Collywog. It's fun and fresh. The artist is clearly skilled, but it's very much in a style that makes it look too cluttered. The concept is too general, but well executed for what it's meant to be. Number 45, Hyena by Apohe Art. It has a nice additional concept with the toxic berry saliva. The art is fantastic, but looks nothing like the Prevo, aside from the stripes, and very much does away with the age-old Pokemon design philosophy that I like to follow, where some kind of balance between cool and cute or scary and goofy is always appreciated. This is a bit too feral looking. Sick though. Number 44, Volglide by Zuela. Our first bat-inspired design. It's cute and cool, which is nice, but I think the execution was fairly minimal. It may need a more expressive pose with an eye or two open. It looks like it's yawning more than laughing, which I assume is the intention. Number 43, Dingodo by Amphony is adorable. I love the segmented rock body that stems from the stripes. It's a great design on its own, but not specifically as an evolved form to my Pokemon. Number 42, Numbash by Megan. It's a great concept. Love the rock gloves, and it's clearly an evolved form of my Pokemon, but the elements given could have been expanded a bit more, and the amount of detail on the mud may trigger some people honestly, even though I think it looks crunchy and satisfying. Number 41, Delvenu by Dragoon Flicks. I love how the spikes become what looks like a drill, but since that's the only meaningful difference, it falls a little bit short. Super cool though, I'd use it. Number 40, Soy Lago by Minty. It's a great example of a concept many try to do, where you give my Pokemon mud arms, and it's definitely working here. I love the green gems, but some aspects could definitely be streamlined, like the tail wrapping around the body. Totally viable evolution. Number 39, Gumihoax by the Red Hatter. Love the personality, and the shapes are very satisfying. A more minimal version of this, with a tad more color, could have been in the top 20. Number 38, Tilafo by Sparts23. I love the rendering. Clearly the artist is great at making a design that looks like a Pokemon, and I love the hint of color. But there are many examples of wispy ghost Pokemon, so there's, very tough competition. This one could take the concept a little further. Number 37, Toxomorph by Delight Trolls. This one takes the concept a little too far. It looks a bit too feral and detail heavy to be a Pokemon, but it's a great piece of art and striking design on its own. But to be fair, it strays a little too far from my design. Doesn't really look like the Prevo, but I love it. Number 36, Fantasine by Stimulant 6. Very much the direction I would have gone in. I love the stripes becoming bone and the mouth ripping open, but like I said, since this is the most common concept among the submissions, the more clever the concept and the better the design, the higher it will place. Number 35, Numbantum by Mikey Maru. Great proportions and colors. Could totally be an Evo of my Pokemon, but the ectoplasm isn't as satisfying as some of the others. Great submission though. Number 34, Tasmarin by Mr. Oddity. It's a sick design, a bit unnecessarily creepy, but I like the colors a lot. Number 33, Pyrocene by Katarina. Pretty much the only design on this list that turns the lines into fire. It looks great, and the concept is fire. No real problem, but aside from the fire, it's relatively simple. That's not a bad thing, it's just that, this is a competition. Number 32, Firaxel by Matthew Bitts. Probably my favorite art style of the bunch. It's a great Pokemon on its own, it's cute and cool, and the stripes becoming weapons was well executed, but it takes a little too much inspiration from Lucario for me to comfortably say it's a viable evolution to my Pokemon. Number 31, Umuvour by Ace Arts. I think combining my Pokemon with a clay oven was one of the best concepts among the submissions. Its color scheme makes sense, and the clay oven neck is satisfying and a distinguishing piece. It's really up to more anatomy and rendering practice to help raise this Pokemon score. On the other hand, number 30, Dracopi by Crimson or Curious Chaos. The actual abilities of Crimson are near perfect. It's simply too much of a design. It contains too many elements that aren't exactly cohesive, but artistically, it's fantastic. Honestly, it's perfect. Like the perspective, the anatomy, everything. It's great. It's incredibly cool, but too drastic of an evolution. That's the real reason it's not higher up. Number 29, Crypthil by the stylish G He. I love the art style and colors. Turning the stripes into bone is always a good idea, but it honestly removes too much from the Prevo and has locations where there is too much detail while the other spots have a little, too little detail. Cool design as a whole though. Number 28, Lankoyot by Pokepal. It's hilarious and very entertaining. For what you were going for, it's perfect execution, but other than taking my Pokemon and stretching it in the shape of a giraffe, it doesn't have much of a concept, and it's obviously not what I was imagining as my Pokemon's Evo. Number 27, Psynoxious by a vague background character. It's got a great personality and amazing colors, but it's not really conveying anything fantastical. But most importantly, it doesn't really read as a Pokemon. The shapes and proportions, despite working as a design, doesn't scream Pokemon. It could totally work in any other franchise though. This is amazing art. Number 26, Gnarlacine by Dynamoka. You see how we're really getting to some fantastic designs now? But like the previous entry, this simply is not, Pokemon's art style or design philosophy. It has far too many details in the anatomy and patterns, which Pokemon rarely does for any old Pokemon with a, 510 base stat total. It's oozing personality and flair, but it very much does not display its water typing in any visual manner. That's kind of an important thing for a Bunyip Fakemon. Number 25, Palacinus by Sergio. It's a flawless design, but too big of a jump from the previous form. You utilized the elements from the Prevo in clever ways, but should have toned down the aggressive design elements a bit so that some kind of personality shows. Nothing's wrong with the design at the end of the day though, it's a perfect design. Number 24, Malacine by Justin. It's super close to the design I would have made. Some shading could have helped amplify its score, but honestly, its expression is also fairly vague. But turning some of the stripes into translucent scars and wounds was a great idea for a Thylacine Pokemon. It simply needs an extra oomph when it comes to the proportions. It's a bit too animalistic, but definitely looks like a Pokemon. Number 23, Gilpurti by 100 Jams. The rendering is flawless. The Aboriginal art inspiration is truly inspired, and the colors are appealing. It does have a little too many patterns, I think, and conflicting shapes. It needs to be consolidated. It definitely has the proportions and art style of a Pokemon, though. It would be top 10 material if we toned down some of the embellishments. Super close, but already a 9 out of 10. Number 22, Antreat by Dust Bunny's Crisis Corner. It's the best Anteater submission in terms of proportions and color. It's adorable and cool, but the concept is fairly minimal with nothing fantastical. It looks too much like a real animal than a superpowered monster. Great shapes and silhouette though. Number 21, Jaxol by T. June. When I showed my artist friends this design, we kinda all agreed that it was one of the best concepts, and they all wanted to take a crack at drawing it. Here's Vergolifus' sketch of what it could have looked like with more Pokemon, compatible proportions. The stripes becoming a spectral draw is incredibly entertaining. If T. June redesigned this in a few years when they become a master artist, this could have been number 1. Now it's time for the top 20. These were all the ones that could have potentially gotten the number 1 spot. The combinations of criteria were simply strict. These are definitely in order, although they're all at least 9 out of 10. Number 20, Malchodigo by Rojo 7500. This is a flawless design, but not a flawless Pokemon design. Sure, the horns come out of nowhere and aren't exactly cohesive, but all the patterns and elements from my design were fully utilized and expanded upon, and you did a great job in eliciting an emotional response from me. I connect with this design, and I truly love its aura, but it's too drastic of a personality change, and it's too one-note for a Pokemon. Even the most ominous Pokemon have something endearing about them, while this one is straight up creepy. Good job though. That's a good thing. You made a creepy piece of art. That's really good. Top 10 material if it was a bit more pocket and a bit less monster. Number 19, Servit by Hello It's Me 881. Combining a civet with a snobby barista with elements of latte art is actually a great concept, and technically, you utilized all of the elements that I've given you fairly well. I'm nitpicking when I say that it has too many distinct patterns like spots, zigzags, and a heart, but the real reason it's not higher is because the ones you're about to see are either more fantastical or have more personality. This one's fairly subdued, Perfect Pokemon though. Number 18, Jackal by A Theta. Clearly a great artist. This jagged art style is appealing to me, but it is a kind of a stretch to say it looks like the Prevo. I love the concept of a sun-based orb on top of it, given its origin, and it's rendered beautifully. However, the orb looks a bit tacked on, especially as an Evo to my Pokemon. It could easily be part of a separate line. It doesn't really, look like an evolved form of mine. I'd want to use it though. Number 17, Luplanta by Tablet Pillow. It's by far the most successful grass-type submission. I love the colors, and the spikes becoming a row of thorns is a nice touch. It definitely looks like a real Pokemon, no doubt, but with some quick modifications to the proportions, this could soar higher. Number 16, Numbastral by Sister Sin. It's a lovable and cool-looking monster. The colors are extremely appealing, and I can see it as an evolution. It looks strong. Toning down some of the tufts and honing in on Pokemon's art style would benefit it a ton. Number 15, Axetalope by April May. Or is that April Mai? We'll never know. The thruster tail is an admirable centerpiece. It's undoubtedly cool, and many viewers would want a Pokemon like this. I'd say a few more passes would totally flesh out the idea. Maybe a longer neck or more aerodynamic horns. We're basically nitpicking at this point. Doesn't matter what I say. Number 14. Borohoshi by Zephyda. It's a spectacular main wolf design with stellar rendering. Zephyda is a fantastic artist, but I wonder if the stars feel a bit random. It's a perfect Pokemon on its own, but I personally don't think it makes a lot of sense as an Evo to my Pokemon. Any similarity is superficial. Unlike number 13, Whirlwolf by Kelpcheap. It's incredibly expressive, and the art is maybe better than anything I currently can do. I love it as its own character, but while there's nothing wrong with a Pokemon that simply becomes extremely masculine as it evolves, in order to brush the top 10, you kind of need an additional concept on top of that. I love it though. Number 13 out of 300 entries ain't bad. Number 12, Kazekuro by Utsukushi Grim. It's a heavily appreciated rendering of a Kamaitachi. Combining it with the Tasmanian Devil also makes a lot of sense culturally. The shading is breathtaking too. It simply may be too big of a leap. Every single pattern and body part has evolved, while usually at least one aspect is kept exactly the same in an evolved form, because you still want to see the soul of the Prevo in this. Number 11, Kirijur by Aries Sheep. It's fabulous, and the colors are immaculate. One of the best pieces of art in this contest, no doubt. It just feels like there's missing a middle stage evolution here, and that's part of the challenge, making sure that this is a believable change. A few less horn segments or tufts of hair would help alleviate that. It's a bit busy. Could easily be someone's favorite though. Number 10, Thylaslate by Septic Skeptic 1. These blocky shapes were a good idea, and having this huge thylacine jaw be made of mud and bone is probably one of the most creative ideas in this contest. One less pattern and segment and slightly more involved shapes and line art could have made this top 3 material easily. And number 9, Flipmunk by Moongator. What's funny is that it utilizes every aspect of my Pokemon while still turning it into a completely different animal. It's not over-designed, and it's both cute and cool. It's my Pokemon, but as a bat. Well executed, but not the kind of concept I was looking for. Now it's time for the top 8. These are the real winners, since at the end of the day, this Pokemon could have multiple evolution options like Eevee. So these are all of my picks if that were the mechanic. The number 1 spot will be the one I'd choose if I could only give one evolved form to my Pokemon. In fact, I didn't make one myself so that the winner could feel honored and have a spot in True Green 7 history as the official evolved form of this Pokemon. But let's first honor the top 8. Number 8. Numbold by Axonite. By far one of the best concepts and executed near perfectly. You basically did everything I would want you to do. These additional termites that look like what I interpret as little aliens inside of a meteor are super interesting, but ultimately, how far you went kinda hinders the design. I'd say sticking with 3 ants would have helped it look a bit less infested, since I can see why the other artist judges that I showed this to found it a little bit creepy. It looks like a Pokemon, but the ants seem like an afterthought. They're a bit too minimal to feel like a separate Pokemon that lives on Numbold. Other than that, this could easily be number 1. It's a great Pokemon. Number 7, Numthwack by Jacob. There are some very clever choices here, like turning the face stripes and ears into a headband, or the back stripes into a belt. I personally love the trope of a small-headed yet big-bodied brute with a kind soul. The pose looks dope, and it would totally be a popular Pokemon, but it could use a second pass to refine the spots to make them feel a bit more necessary. Perhaps fill in the negative space and make the head a tad bigger. I love what you're going for. It's just that if we're going to submit a relatively simple concept like this, it would need to be flawlessly rendered to win. Number 6, Thylurk by Super Cyan. One of my favorites here, literally. I love the personality, shapes, and colors, and it's super close to what I would have done, but it needs, additional oomph for it to rise above the many ghost-type submissions, like a wisp or additional aspect. You amplified my Pokemon's appeal, sure, but didn't really add anything other than an evolved personality, and I love that personality. But personality can't win you the number 1 spot alone. Probably my favorite character here, regardless. Number 5. Numboro by Assorted Soups. This is the absolute closest to how I would execute the same exact concept. It looks exactly like something I would make. If the expression was just a tiny bit less blank, this would have entered the top 3, and if the pose was slightly more dynamic, it would have won. Even in its current state, I wouldn't mind giving it the highest honor, but I guess the following had an extra it factor. 10 out of 10 though. I'm genuinely amazed. Number 4. Setla Step by Zebra Knight 1. This is the exact concept I wanted to see, and the execution is masterful. Some amazing art here. It's a bit too horizontal, so it was harder to read the details and especially the expression. If the face was easier to decipher, this could have been the number 1 pick. The footprints and set inspiration were a great idea, and the colors are so satisfying to see. Another 10 out of 10. Number 3. Theatricon by Will Perry. There really isn't any critique here, honestly. You nailed the Pokemon art style and the shading and the proportions, the shapes are grand, and the inspiration was smart, the execution makes sense, and you expanded on everything my Pokemon had while making it a believable evolution. The number 2 spot simply had my favorite concept, and the number 1 spot had the best overall design. But this has a perfect balance of design and concept. You nailed it. Number 2. Tasmascare by Seb Scanizares. This kind of proves that you don't have to be a master to create my favorite concept in the video. Not only did it go in the ghostly direction that I and many other artists went in, but it found a unique way to incorporate the thylacine inspiration and ghost typing by having a silent and friendly form as a transition and then a hostile ghostly whale form that elicited such a strong emotion from me. The gaping open mouth that yells at its victims is so well executed. The amount of detail and how it expands on my design is basically perfect. If Sebastian was a little further in his art journey when designing it, so that the anatomy and shading was a little higher level, this would have easily won. I simply think it makes sense to give the top spot to the entry that had not only the best balance of all of my criteria, but also executed everything professionally. So number 1 is Blanchette by Bielsa Art 3. When I showed this to my other artist judges, it was their instant favorite, and after much deliberation, I agree. When I asked my viewers to design Fakemon for a contest, I simply have to pick the best designed Pokemon, and I think this is it. There were many submissions with concepts I loved, but they didn't quite execute their ideas perfectly. And there were amazing designs with tame concepts. But Bielsa Art 3 had a stupendous idea with the skills to bring it to life. And to honor the winner, I will finally name the Prevo, so that it falls in line with this evolved form's name. I dubbed the Numblank, which evolves when traded with a winter coat into Blanchette. Now it's time for part 2. The second Pokemon I made was this peculiar water type. It's far more complicated than the previous Mon, but that's the point. The first Mon could be interpreted in any way, but this one could only really be interpreted in around, give or take 2 ways. You see, this Pokemon is based on the phrase red herring. A herring is a type of fish that is often smoked, but in literary terms, a red herring is a clue or piece of information that is meant to be misleading to the audience or reader. So in a mystery, if there's a suspicious-looking gentleman who appears a few times, but in fact the real culprit is some other character, the sus man is a red herring. In a debate, a red herring is an argument that distracts you from the real issue. Kind of like this hat. A logical fallacy, basically. So I took that literally and combined it with a thresher shark, which are these goofy-looking sharks with long tails they use to whack and stun their prey with. I ended up with a tiny little shark with a tail that looks like a red herring. This tail is in fact a literal red herring because the real animal is the tiny shark in the front. That's why this herring looks flat and soulless, because the scared little shark is the real Pokemon. When I asked the artists who submitted what they thought the Pokemon was, there was a decent amount of people who said shark, around 18%. Only 9 of the 300 could identify it as a thresher shark, but absolutely nobody was able to determine that the concept was a literal red herring, at least in the proper poll. When I was reading MC Ashtray's submission, I did realize that they noticed the concept, so good job, dude. A good amount thought it was a beta fish, but almost everybody understood that the tail wasn't the real Pokemon. I guess nobody put red herring together. No biggie though, since most interpreted this design in 2 ways. Either the shark becomes bigger, or the tail does. Some made the tail sentient, while others went in a completely unique way. Let's finally get to the top 50. Of course, the format is the exact same as the last Pokemon, so let's quickly showcase some honorable mentions. Mailfin by Simon Roy Graffiste has got the right idea and an entertaining execution. Amphishake by Darian Green Dex is super cool and colorful. Ansiturn by Tia Jin is super mesmerizing. Engylure by Sombra Malamut. It's pretty sick. This is pretty sick, guys. Aeolost? I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. By Pint-Sized Kiwi YT is fairly unique. Incineroar by Sketching It Out is hilarious. Finigami by Heavyball 2 is a genius concept. Anti-Ant's pixel art was super fun to see. Morapen by Airy Sheep is pretty dope. Mimetra by Mellow Mallow is a total cutie. Karma by Annie Hansen fits in with the top 50 as well. Jognotic by Yoshi11720 is definitely the most unique entry. Suspicious by Dust Bunny's Crisis Corner is simple yet soothing. Maki Maki by Chili302 has one of my favorite color schemes. It makes a good impression. Amahako by Oedai is very pretty. Sai Pierrot by Sergio Reyes is a great design, but barely close to what I want from an evolved form of my Pokemon. And Koibuki by Nif Duo is a very pretty design with amazing shading. Now let's actually go in depth with numbers 50 to 20. Number 50, Terrafry by Sunday Swirling. There were many designs where the concept was that the shark becomes the tongue of a huge monster, and this is one of the most entertaining. It's got a great silhouette, but a far too simple art style and super random choice of animal, honestly. Number 49, Uladori by Ozitron 5000. A great concept and design with loads of personality. It honestly would have been in the top 20 if it had a little more time to cook. Number 48. Serpinity by Zuella. A great piece of art, but a bit too minimal in the concept department to go higher. Way above average though. Number 47. Aeroticula by Uskushi Grim. A very complete design with marvelous shading. It's borderline busy, yet one of the most solid submissions, but not the most cohesive on the list. Number 46. Tassel by Ghost. It's one of the most entertaining designs here, and I'm glad I saw it. It's trying to do a bit too much, but it did put a smile on my face. Number 45. Sealigrafish by Health Gauge. There's no problem with it. I love the shark and I love the tail. It looks sick. I guess later designs simply impressed me more in the concept department, but it's a design that you should definitely be proud of. Number 44. Cenadeep by Person Who Is. It's a magnificent design, but honestly looks nothing like the Prevo. If its snout was a different color, it would share nothing. Number 43. Devish by Cameron Z. A great example of how a traditionally drawn design could still soar high. It's a respectable Fakemon that makes sense as an Evo, but perhaps combining a Goblin Shark and a Helicoprion makes it hard to focus on. Number 42. Makori by Origirl Oni. One of the few designs where the shark grows up and wears the tail as a suit. It's incredibly entertaining, just needs a bit more streamlining. Number 41. Fallacy by MC Ashtray. The only one to fully understand the concept and give the evolved form a perfect name. Oh my god, it's an amazing name. It's a simple design and one of many with the same concept, but totally valid and appreciated. Number 40. Mimino by Stimulant 6. It's the raddest so far, very hardcore. Perhaps a bit too grotesque, but far from a mistake. You did good. Number 39. Gulpair by David. The shapes in this design are impressive. It feels like a professional artist designed it, but at the mere age of 13, David pulled off something impressive. I guess it may be too abstract for me, and the tail and fish look a bit disjointed, but that's just a disagreement on the concept. The actual design is great. Number 38. Sturgent by Septic Skeptic 1. This is a super underrated one. Turning the tail into a flag is kinda genius. It goes a bit overboard with the amount of details, but if it was streamlined and had a few iterations, it would be top 10 material. Number 37. Ziffysword by Notorious NPC. It feels like a real Pokemon, and the proportions are perfect in my opinion, but it looks more like a regional form of my design than an evolved form. Dude definitely knows how to design a Pokemon though. Number 36. Navalink by D3V3 Art. It's a fun design, but far too clunky and looks nothing like a Pokemon I know. However, as a creature design, it's perfect, but I'd strip it of a few segments and small details if I'd want it to rise up in the ranks. Number 35. Antitefisk by Slinkier. Or is it Antitifisk? It's a fantastic concept, and you executed it perfectly. I think it definitely deserves top 20, but not as an evolved form of my Pokemon. It would be perfect as a standalone mon. Number 34. Ornamin by 100 Jams. Clearly the artist is incredibly skilled, so go follow them, but this looks nothing like my Prevo. Similar concepts, of course, and a 10 out of 10 Fakemon design. Number 33. Sudafin by Dragoon Flix. Clearly you've seen how many submissions have this exact concept, so I can't put it any higher, but it's a great example of this kind of submission. Number 32. Thrallor by Stylish G He. Love the art style as well. It makes me super happy. I can look at it for days, but it was hard to sell as a Pokemon, and many submissions have the same concept, although yours is one of my, the most entertaining at least. Great work. Number 31. Beta Bancho by Spooky Fakemon. I love the shading choices, and this is a very believable Pokemon, but not what I'm looking for as an evolved form for my Pokemon. You've clearly mastered Pokemon's design philosophy though. Number 30. Foakuda by Cithrin. Love it as a character. Great creature designing skills, but too silly to be the Evo I'm personally looking for. Number 29. Threceptive by Chalulasaurus. A great example of the kind of evolution I was looking for, focusing on making the shark bigger and more confident while still evolving the tail's design without overdoing it is the direction I think should be gone in. It looks like a real Pokemon and is traditionally drawn no less, so I gotta respect it. I'm just looking for a slightly more clever concept. Number 28. Brazil Blade by Glim Glam Ram. While the concept doesn't evolve much from the Prevo, I love the shape you went with for the shark's head. Very unique and well executed. Number 27. Odon Terror by Psych Lantern. See, this one adds an additional concept to the shark without going overboard. The tail, however, needs to evolve more fantastically though. Totally nailed the Pokemon art style. So, amazing job. Number 26. Mysidius by A Theta. It's cute and charming. Wonderful little character, but in terms of concept, it barely evolved. It's still a cowardly little fish with a false head for a tail, albeit better designed than mine, honestly. This should have been the Prevo. Number 25. Yakiwani by Zebra Knight 1. It's one of the coolest designs yet. The colors are perfect and the proportions make it feel grand. It's simply hard to understand if the tail or fish is the sentient half, and the hook is a bit tacky. I think this would be in the top 10 if I simply had a convo with the artist to clear up any of my questions. Number 24. Angler by James111. You may be thinking this is one of the least professionally rendered design here, but goddamn did James master the fundamentals of Pokemon proportions and the amount of detail a Pokemon should have. There is no aspect I would remove, and the concept of having a tail become a fin so it looks like a male attached to a female anglerfish is genius. If this was just a sketch and James went on to make a fully rendered version with cleaned up line art and proper shading, this would have been in the top 3. I know James can do it. Number 23. Zavatak by Noy. It's super fun and unique. I never thought any submission would evolve my Pokemon into a clown dogfish. Number 22. Fuegodon by Crimson. Now, Curious Chaos clearly mastered the Pokemon art style. This is very much rendered and designed like a Pokemon form. That's the issue. It doesn't look like how a Pokemon would look like all the time. It could easily be a Mega or a Gigantamax or, a temporary form. An A+1 at that. It's just too ambitious for a normal evolved form. A more subdued version of this would have won. Number 21. Threshlore by Assorted Soups. This is very adorable, and I really like the art style. There's nothing wrong with it. I would have hoped that the tail would still look at least a little bit like a fish, but that's not a flaw. Now here's the top 20. Everything beyond here is a winner in some way. Number 20. Ninjul by Moldstone. This is a flawless Fakemon design, but come on. Yeah, Pokemon like Octillery have a complete shift in design upon evolution, but for a contest like this, despite rays actually being related to sharks, you want the evolved form to at least slightly resemble the Prevol. I get the idea, but it would be unfair to give it a higher spot. It would be in my top 10 favorite Pokemon though, if it existed. Number 19. Scopoprake by Dur. It's barely an evolution, but goddamn is it adorable, and technically a really well-designed Pokemon. Number 18. Spatchette by HWGDC18. The art is insanely good. For what it's supposed to be, it's executed amazingly. It's the best of this kind of submission, but I'm looking for a different concept, honestly. Number 17. Gotham Feed by Walrot. I love the art style, and you nailed it with the colors. It's fantastic Fakemon, but it's a bit hard to read. But once you get what's going on, it's obvious the artist knows how to design a Pokemon. Number 16. Foiblure by PokePal15. It's the most straightforward of the top 20. It's the kind of thing I was looking for, and the artist clearly understands what a Pokemon looks like. It honestly kind of looks like something I'd designed, but I'm not the most creative person, so. Number 15. Charlotte by Adamonstro. It's a fantastic concept and executed quite well. The juxtaposition between the ugly shark and the beautiful tail is a clever kind of concept that I'm looking for. A bit hard to read for a second, so another pass would have totally made it a top 10 material. Very well designed though. Number 14. Nisai Ryu by Will Perry. I think this is kind of what I was looking for. The tail becomes more elaborate, but the shark also evolves substantially. The rendering is also one of the best. At this point, the closest to a Pokemon's art style. You nailed it. Like, you should definitely commission Will Perry if you want a Fakemon that accurately mimics what a real Pokemon looks like. Number 13. Arceus by PG Hearts. Now you're beginning to see what I mean, where it does what I want to see, but more. You gotta wow me, and this definitely does. This personality is great, and you even infuse some of the personality into the tail, while keeping the shark as the only sentient part of the design. That's what I want. It's a bit too much, but that's a nitpick, honestly. Number 12. Misselin by Raidmon. The line art is a bit too sketchy, and the shading needs a second pass, but if the artist took just that extra step to finish off the rendering, this would have been number 1. It's a perfect evolved form of my design in every single way. The shapes are interesting, and the artist knows how to make something look 3D and have the right balance of proportions and detail to look like an actual Pokemon. It's the most underrated design so far, a personal favorite. Number 11. Rusacees by Kaiser Quasar. Literally nothing wrong as a Pokemon design. It's genius, and I don't really have any critiques. It simply went in a different direction, which is a good thing in terms of art, but not always the way to go in a contest. You gotta find the right balance of making the perfect design while predicting what the judge wants, Number 10. Mimikry by Axonite. Every design from here on was basically what I wanted to see in some way. You evolved both the shark and the fish without overdoing it. It's a wonderful design, and if it existed in the game, I'd be like, yeah, another banger by Game Freak. Near perfect proportions and the right amount of detail. But now that I think of it, a few less spots and slightly longer tail would have put this in the top 50. Top tier nitpick though. Number 9. Illusion by Fossil Claws. Of all the submissions where the tail becomes sentient and the shark becomes the tail, this is the best. It looks like a Pokemon, looks like an Evo, love the personality, and I wish there was more room for it in the top 8, but it's a fairly simple concept. That doesn't mean that what you're about to see is objectively better. I'd be happy with this one at number 1, but goddamn did the fish have some good competition. And once again, here are my favorite 8, the group that you'd be able to pick from if this Pokemon had 8 Evos like Eevee. Number 8. Embedda by Vague Background Character. This is stupendous and breathtaking. The perspective, line art, shading, everything is impressive. It's a perfect Pokemon. Right amount of detail and personality. It looks like an evolved form, but some of the following kind of beat it in the concept department. If every submission looked like this, though, I'd be very happy. Number 7. Bishige by Yokaiju. Probably the only evolved form where I'm fine with the fish itself staying cowardly and barely evolving. The personality is extremely well done, and the tail is beautiful. To some, it may be a bit complicated, but here it makes a statement and makes total sense. The tail subtly looks like Mega Rayquaza, and that's a big brain move. Dude knows how to make a Pokemon, sheesh. Number 6, Batrimimark and Miminit, I'm not even gonna try that, by Rojo 7500. Here's the thing, each artist only gets one slot in this contest, and the other judges and I couldn't figure out which of these was better. We were completely split. They're both perfect. Batrimimark is my personal favorite, and exactly what I would have done. Unfortunately, I can't pass either into the top 5 without knowing which one to single out. You kinda get an advantage when you have 2 completely separate designs to choose from, but that also means I'm gonna judge you a bit harsher than the others. That's why you gotta pick one to submit. Number 5, Railfin by Dynamocha. Yeah, this is pretty dope. This is what I expected and more. It's a bit over-rendered for a Pokemon, but that's just fancy talk for saying that it's too epic and involved to be a Pokemon with a base stat total of below 480. We can all agree this is among the sickest Fakemon we've ever seen, but you'll see how another entry did a similar thing, but with the right amount of balance of everything the judges and I were looking for. Number 4, Kareel. Daniel didn't even put his name or any other info on this marvelous piece. But guess what? You wanna hear the hard truth? This is exactly what I wanted to see, and more. The shark evolved to be menacing, the tail becomes even more elaborate without being over-designed, it's the perfect amount of detail with the right balance of proportions for it to look like a real Pokemon. This would have won if it was a finished drawing. This is just a sketch. No line art, no shading. If you just spent an extra hour of work, all the artists I showed this to agreed that it would have won. What happened, Daniel? God, I hope something bad didn't happen to him. I don't even know who made this, so if you're watching, Daniel, let us know what's up. Peace. Now for the actual top 3. Number 3, Betraytriarch by Kelpcheap. She's fabulous. She's striking. She's over the top in a good way. The pose and perspective was tasteful, and you managed to evolve both the fish and tail in an unexpected yet welcome way. If a couple of details were streamlined, consolidated maybe, this would win. This is what this contest is all about. Number 2, Liatail by Quetzalpali. If Game Freak were to evolve my Pokemon, it would look like this. This is what I would have done. It's as if the artist stole this from my dreams. Literally flawless in every measure I've been mentioning for the entire video. Top tier energy and top tier design. But my absolute favorite and the official evolved form of Bluffin is Chartrick by Dadrake95. Everybody who saw this instantly knew it was going to be number 1. It is the perfect balance of everything that makes for a perfect Fakemon, but also a perfect submission, for this contest at least. It is clearly an evolved form of Bluffin while expanding on it in every single way, with the right amount of oomph I'm looking for. I'm honored to make this the official evolved form of my humble little shark. 11 out of 10. And if you want to see another fan contest exactly like this one, please leave a like and let these artists know how good of a job they did. If this video does well, part 2 is without a doubt happening, and the winners will be getting a cash prize calculated based on this video's performance. So the more views this video gets, the higher the prize will be. But that also means I will be judging even harsher. Check out the other Pokemon videos of mine, and I'll see you guys very soon.